Okay, it's another part for this marble rock. And so if we don't act it out, if we sit with it in meditation, it seems almost impossible to ask that from some people, because I see that a lot of people are so inflamed, and then there are organized criminal rings that are even throwing gasoline into that fire. So it's happening right now. So the already inflamed, this driving oneself further and further and further into a hatred against a specific demographic, and further and further into the feeling of unempowerment, and oh, they wronged me, or they have these big mansions and we don't, and they're people of all colors that have the big mansions. But the ego doesn't fit into the ego's storyline, so they'll just ignore that. And they just drive themselves further and further into it. And they go to the point where it becomes a complete reversal of, where it becomes a repetition of history, just with the other person. So then it's no longer standing up reasonably against injustice. Then it becomes a witch hunt. It becomes demonization. It becomes a dictatorship, and that's what we want to avoid. So that's why this is so important. This emotional hurt, it's happening on an individual basis. People are suffering. Then an organized crime ring comes in and throws fuel into that fire. Instead of helping them, they aggravate them, make it worse, right? So that's what's going on right now, particularly in the United States, but worldwide. Sorry about the noises. So I told him I'm making a video. Yes. Okay, let me just go ahead and turn this garbage disposal on, that to add, it's my contribution to the video. Okay, whatever. Anyway, but I can make this into a joke, or I can get irritated and angry, So better to make it into a joke. And also the most important thing is to look at whatever is aggravating you. You feel disrespected. I feel like he disrespects me, right? So this is a minor thing. He disrespects me on other things much worse. And I have to constantly remind him of the boundaries. Here is the boundary, okay? Respect it, okay? Here's the boundary. The boundary says no double standards allowed, okay? Double standard, red bar across, okay? No, it doesn't register. Okay, so, but I have to remind him anyway. I have to set up the boundaries, and I have to say it. If I say it for the rest of my life, I say, I do not deserve to be yelled at, and he'll yell at me again. And he's doing a double standard, right? So it's happening again and again and again. He sees my wrongdoing. He doesn't see his wrongdoing. He cannot see it. So with the people that are rioting, that's like escalated, multiplied, exponentialized in this way. Okay, an exponentialized double standard and tunnel vision of, like they see themselves as wronged. They don't see the other person's perspective. Okay, and it is very important to go into meditation and calm the heck down. I have to do it every day on my own. Every day I have to remind myself, yes, that's the ego. That is, my dad disrespected me. It's my ego gets inflamed. Right? So if it wasn't for this ego thingy, then I would be a Buddha and I would say, yes, it's okay. When we're children, we're the most vulnerable. When we are hurt, when we're children, that's a trauma. Okay, that creates a lifelong severe form of PTSD. It's a very serious thing. It's already bad to be mean to each other, for adults to be mean to adults, but animals and children are the most vulnerable, and they need to be protected. They must be protected. This is infinitely important, that we must protect these vulnerable minds. Okay. There are dogs who had been so traumatized. There are puppies. Puppies are normally infinitely trusting. I have seen the videos of puppies so traumatized that they just bite around themselves, just cannot let a hand near them, and they will bite because they're so traumatized. For them to rehabilitate a dog like this is probably impossible, and it just creates prolonged suffering. And I suggest euthanasia for an animal who is that severely traumatized, because that's a lifetime of extreme suffering, and that is wrong. Okay, suffering is wrong. And the Buddha also talked about this very subject. He said we must end suffering. A lot of the spiritual community people don't seem to understand this. They just latch on to the corporate agenda. I don't even want to repeat what they say. The Buddha said, end suffering. Okay. We must end suffering. And we must do everything in our personal leverage and power to help the world end suffering. Okay. We need ending of suffering in ourselves. Okay. No more acting out, no more self-harm, never harming anyone else. Okay. Particularly be gentle with animals and children. It's all baby beings. Okay. Very, very infinitely important. Infinitely important to remember this. Okay. Anyone who's any kind of predator person, pedophile, remember this. This is never ever cause a living being pain. Okay. Never cause a living being a lifetime with PTSD and difficult, horrible coping mechanisms of hand washing, which I have. I have to deal with this because of my childhood trauma. And almost all girls have been physically, emotionally, and sexually abused by someone. Almost all. Almost all. Now take that into perspective. That means the human species has become insane. Okay, the animals don't do that to each other. Okay. So the human species has become insane. Jiddu Krishnamurti talked about this with Dr. David Bohm. Okay, where how is this possible that something can derange like that? That biological functions can derange into something like this, into sadistic behavior and sexual predation. How can something derail to this point? So that's why it is very important. Every single person in the world needs to become 100% aware about this, aware of what that causes, what suffering that causes. And they need to become aware of their own suffering, what has happened to them, okay, which is not an excuse for later behavior. Okay, no excuse. Okay, we need to take full responsibility now, and we need to be fully accountable for what we do, no matter what happened to us in the past. Okay. It's traumatic, it's horrible. The pain is terrible. The pain is there. I see it, I understand this. But that's not an excuse. That's not some kind of green light to go out and act this out. Act out that trauma on others. Okay. There's no excuse for that whatsoever. Okay. I see lawyers are going into making excuses after excuses for criminals. Okay, this has to stop now. Okay, this has to stop. We cannot continue like this. Okay, no more excuses for anyone. We need to have accountability and transparency, and we need to nurture responsibility, responsible behavior. This is very, very important. Mikhail Gorbachev talked about this a whole lot. That brought down the Soviet Union. Mikhail Gorbachev did. The people were also fed up with that system. And he was able to speak to the public. He was able to get through to the public with that. He said we can no longer live in a state of oppression. Okay. It was not Ronald Reagan who brought that down. No, it was Mikhail Gorbachev. Okay. An amazing, amazing brain, amazing mind. One of the star presidents, star leaders of the world in history. Should have received world nomination for Peace Prize for peace and love, creating peace and love. Problems came out of the end of the Soviet Union, of course. More problems arise, whatever situation happens. There are changes in political systems, and they bring more problems with them. But then we need to deal with those problems in a responsible way. And it starts with us. It starts with every single individual person. Okay? Because all of these systems, they come into existence because of the mental states of every single individual person. So it is for us to go into meditation, and that is really working on ourselves. Never acting it out anymore, but sit with it in meditation. And something amazing comes out of this. Okay, you guys take care.